The American dream. What is the American dream and is it reachable?
Hmm.
Ooh, that's a topic.
You
But
know, there's so
Well,
many
okay,
routes we
so
could take. Go ahead, Shake. Go, Shake.
what is the American dream? The American dream, by definition, as was written down in what, like the 50s when middle class started coming up, was 2.2 kids and two dogs, right? It has changed and will constantly change. The problem is, long story short, we as society has not changed along with it. We keep thinking as Americans we deserve all kinds of excess, and the problem is we can't sustain excess and do what we wanted. Um, the days of one being able to sustain on a is basically over. Kids are now an expense, right? It's a choice now. So the dream is still attainable, but the dream is not what your grandfather or father or X, Y, and Z, mother X, Y, and Z. Because as a child of immigrants, as an immigrant, my parents hit the dream, right? My dream is different from what theirs are as a child. So I think it's attainable. It just depends on what you believe the American dream is and how you have to move along with it as it's changed over the decades.
okay, you made a good point. Ideologies and ideals change and they evolve throughout time, but you didn't mention what you mentioned that the American dream for your parents is different than what yours would be. So what is yours?
So my parents' dream was, mom, come up here, get educated, get a higher learning education, start a family. Mine was clearly grow up in this country, get a higher education, or well, get a good education. I should have gotten a higher education, did not, but get a good paying job too. Then I have the choice to do whatever that I don't. I have the choice to not have a family, right? To choose to do it. Unlike my parents, I think a lot of what the new American dream is the choice that previous generations did not have, and I think that's the burden that many of us are feeling is the benefit, the blessing, and the curse of having choices that previous didn't have.
Hero?
Shake, I agree with Shake 110%. And what Shake makes a great point. As two immigrant people who have parents who immigrated here, people who didn't grow up here, the American dream is a nightmare for Americans. It is not something that we can woefully hold on to or even contemplate in its entirety. This topic could be talked about in for eternity. But for you to sit here and believe that as an American, your dreams are being fulfilled when you don't have health care, when your roads are trash, when you only have a two-tier system, your food costs more than it's ever cost in his lifetime. Meanwhile, companies and corporations have more than you will ever have, more rights than you will ever have. It's a farce. But the American dream for someone like me who came to this country with nothing is to literally come here, take everything, and leave. Because that's what the American dream is. The American dream is truly a nightmare in itself that Americans come, consume, and then leave. We learned this lesson by being colonized. So we took this lesson from our colonizers and we're taking it back home. I have two houses back in Africa. That's not by mistake because I don't plan on being here the rest of my life. It sounds ridiculous in retrospect, but when my parents retired, they went back home. A large part of the American dream is getting out of America. It's crazy to think about because when you finally leave America and go to these other countries, our brothers to the north, our sisters to the south, you quickly find out we're being mistreated, we're being abused, we're being used. And the last part of this is the American dream that you're given, the inception, the rat wheel that you're put into the matrix, where you're forced to work so you can provide the quality sleep and dreams of the corporations that run everything. There's so many avenues you could go down in this whole conversation. But if we're talking about me and what I want to do, my American dream is to get the hell out of America with as much of the resources that is trying to keep from me. Period.
And I think here we'll kind of saying the same thing. think it's a perspective of us being immigrants and children of immigrants. Our American dream is always extract, right?
Yeah.
Extract as much value from this country. That's what our parents were either sent here to do or what they went here, right? Extract as much knowledge, everything, right? And if you have to stay here, then make sure your kids extract as much out as possible. I think the difference for us as opposed to Americans is where do they go, right? We understand there is so much worse. As bad as this place is, right? We got every summer we were sent back to a place that looked, even though it might be more beautiful and more patters, but like there's also piss poor poverty and a level like that many have not seen. As bad as some of our worst inner cities, we've seen piss poor poverty, right? You know, you have cousins who are piss poor, right? Who you're sending ovens down in containers, right? They don't have electricity. So you understand, right, as fucked up as this first/third world country is, right? You're like, this is paradise compared to what my mother left, what I've left, X, Y, and Z. And I've come to realize as I have more immigrant friends, we all, in a sense, have that same thing of like, oh, your dream, our dream is different from American children, right?
Yeah.
Our dream is just take the same way, in a sense, like you said, the colonizers took from us, just take as much as you can out, right? If you can't leave, then keep it, take it and keep it amongst yourselves. So this is a different mentality between Americans and non-Americans of how we look at the American dream.